Hey everyone, this is WheatDraws. A little bit different from the usual. I'll have a webcam just because I like talking with my hands a lot, and I do that, and I realize it doesn't come through just audio recording. So instead, I will just be having this record audio as I watch it and video, so you can kind of get sort of the way I talk and all that. I apologize if I look a little off. I haven't got a haircut in a while. Just been postponing it. I do not like having this long a hair. At this point, it gets to a bit where I find it not fun to manage personally. As for now, we're going to do a commentary and reflection on sort of the development of Amnesia. I'll provide some insights on some of the design decisions and the ideas that went into it, and the smaller details that might be overlooked or forgotten about, the direction that we went with, and also shouting out, of course, people that we've worked with and how instrumental they were to making this concept like some of the most impressive stuff that I think we've ever done, maybe ever will do. It's been a long time in the works, especially after SCP had to get canned for some legal reasons that we were not safe pursuing or risking all that time and effort that could just get thrown away. So basically, since that, we have started working on Amnesia. Like, that is like how long this took. Normally we would have this sort of parts of it done ahead of time, or at least prepared. So that is, if that gives you an idea of how long this has been in development for, among also a lot of time off figuring out things out, personal times. Again, everyone who does this stuff, volunteer work, we don't get paid for it, we don't make money, there's no monetary, like my stuff, like my charms merch or my perk pack series, that is all my own income, although we have in the past of our own individual incomes of the core team put into this project. This is a passion project, it is a labor of love, and we're just glad to share this with the community as much as we possibly can. And we're just so glad to have the support that we do have, and we can't wait to show you what we're working on next. And I really want to share a lot more details, but I can't, so I'm gonna have to restrain myself. I don't want to edit this video, but if I let something slip, I'll have to edit it, and you'll know that I'm an idiot. Okay, so let's get started with this. So this is Spotlight Concept. This premiered as I'm recording this. It is literally midnight, 2 minutes after midnight, 2nd of July. I got back from a long board game night right after the premiere. Had a ton of fun. So we'll get right into this. I have English captions on. We have our typical intro.
Welcome to Dead by Daylight.
So we have captions as always. Break translators. We have Kay, who does our German translations. We have Astafer, who does our Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese translation. And then there is, I'm going to be really sad if I forget anyone. Then we have First Encounter Salt, who is also our music guy, who does the Spanish translations. And then we have Garlic Goat, or it might be Goat Garlic, I can't remember which order of the words it is, who does the Italian translation. And all of them are super cool. They're really nice to talk to. I feel like I'm forgetting a language. Let me check real quick. I'm going to feel real bad. English, German, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish. Gotcha. Okay, cool. First try. I'm not going to cut that out because I am very self-conscious about not crediting people. Super incredible, helpful people. We don't give them the translations yet, the things that need to be translated, until very late in the process, because we want to have the timestamps already figured out. So we just say, hey, here's the timestamps. Here's what needs to be translated. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm usually the one who kind of organizes a lot of the volunteers and tries to get some ideas across. So a lot of my work is, while people know me for the icons or the designs and stuff, I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff as well, and not just that. So yeah, and then also speaking, as you've probably already heard the voice, I'm just gonna turn it down a little bit. Pixelbush, Will, also known as Pixelbush, super kind guy. Been an amazing opportunity to work with him. When we first were looking at who to get to narrate this, this was sort of a leftover idea from SCP when we were in the early concepting phase, where I said it would be super cool if we had an idea of doing some like archive type entries where we would have like videos of like lore entries of like SCP records being read, and it would be Pixel Bush reading it because he's like the lore guy for Dead by Daylight, and everyone knows him for that kind of thing, and he'd be a great narrator to sort of read off these story entries to kind of immerse SCP into the world. And that didn't really go anywhere, and then the concept kind of fell through because that was all extra details and stuff like that. So eventually that got scrapped. Never contacted him about it. I actually told him about it. If you watched my interview, the like long sort of podcast-esque talk I had with him on this channel earlier last year, and I mentioned, oh yeah, we had this idea. At that point, he was already on board with this project, so it's been a while that he's been on our minds. And when I reached out to him, I pitched it to Rare Things, and I was like, hey, I know this guy. He's like the lore guy for Dead by Daylight. He'd be a great fit. He's one, has a great sort of storyteller voice. Two, British. Amnesia, that kind of goes hand in hand. But no, I was like, this is a great pick. Would be one of my first picks. And so we had him read off portions of older scripts, which we don't normally do, just because we weren't totally sure. We were trying to still figure out who to do. So I asked him, hey, can you record this? And he sent it back, and it was awesome. We worked it out over the course of, I want to say, maybe a month or a little over a month. It wasn't like constant back and forth recordings. We got it ironed out. We got some retakes. It was super cool to work with on those. Got to trust him with the whole Daniel secret, which is awesome. And it was just a very cool time. It's always awesome to have some people come on who haven't done work with us. Like, every single time we get a new voiceover, and we want to make sure that voiceover, that narrator, really captures the tone and the setting we want to go for. So for example, when we did Slender, our main things that we were looking for in a character was specifically the narrator was specifically the idea of a storyteller, because that's where the script was going. A storyteller who's at a campfire sharing a scary story to kind of put people at nerves, like camp counselor kind of trying to scare the new kids or the new counselors, that kind of vibe. And with Bronx, we had a great vibe with that. He had such like a low sort of like menacing sort of growl in a sense to the way he spoke, and it really got that feeling across that I really wanted in the script that I wrote. Same thing with sort of this like pressurized sort of bold energy with Farmer John for FNAF. This sort of bouncy, a little silly but still serious energy for Pennywise, and so on. Like, a lot of thought goes into this stuff. We don't want to just pick people, because they have, this many subscribers, this many views, this many Twitter followers, or something like that. We want people who feel like they tonally can embody it, and also make it sort of a game, like, who's going to be the new voiceover for this? Who's going to be narrating this concept? It's very fun to see people sort of theorize and consider what we've considered, and we can also go through the best people in the communities of like online horror, especially Dead by Daylight, and just say this would be an ideal person, this would be a great person. And we've had a lot of people on our list. We've contacted some other people. We haven't always gotten yeses, unfortunately, but we're very happy with the people that we've chosen. And I think I'm talking maybe a little too long, about 9 minutes now into a sort of commentary on this one video, and I'm not even 20 seconds in. But yeah, all that front loaded, super cool to work on the script with Pixel Bush. Just very kind individual. I would highly recommend checking out his channel if you're into any Dead by Daylight lore, or even other chapter concepts. He's done his own series of chapters that could be in Dead by Daylight, the issues with that, and also some of his own ideas. I actually helped with one of his on a Magic the Gathering one, which I am a huge fan of, and I would love to do a Magic the Gathering concept if we had the resources to do so. Brandenburg Castle was always going to be the map. It was never not going to be the map.
Growths of tendons and fleshy mass.
I'm trying to remember if there's anything particular. Oh, so normally in the past, especially if like FNAF or Pennywise, the map itself is on the same map. Like when we're recording in one corner of the game of the footage, like for the spotlight, it's rendering the entire map the entire time. So starting with this, because you know we're editing this, it's not like a playable map, it's not something that people are going to be running around sort of thing. We sort of framed it and edited around the fact that we just have chunks of the map loaded, so we get better frame rate, better performance, doesn't feel laggy, and so hopefully that comes through in the videos, that it just looks better, or it doesn't look like it's as slow. Another thing is that RareThink's got a better computer since. There are some shots in the concept that are rendered on a newer version of the engine, which is what we'll be using going forward. But we were so deep in the concept at the point when we got to use the newer version that it would have been difficult to sort of port or remake what we had already in the new engine. So I will point out those shots as we come to them. I believe there's some that I might be wrong about, but there's one for sure I know that was done in the newer engine. That way it would look at its absolute peak.
Beautifully filtering the moonlight, decorating parts of the floor in a shuttered
yeah, I don't think this is my favorite concept. I think Pennywise, despite I'm not a huge fan of Pennywise or it at all, I think that's still like our best concept in my personal opinion. But I really think that this is some of the most impressive work that we've done on a technical level in visual. I think this is also a new engine clip. I could be wrong. I also wanted to point out the name, the Gatherer. Some people were saying, I remember somebody said, oh, it's a little weird that he's not named the Grunt or not named this or that. And naming conventions for DVD are always a little like there's some debate over them, and there's really no right way to say it. However, I do feel like calling them the Grunt sort of, the word grunt, if you're not familiar with Amnesia lore, is sort of sounds like it's a lackey or a weaker individual compared to what else. And you don't really want to make the killers sound like they're weak. You don't want to make them sound like they're sort of this, you know, a character you can just push aside, right? Like you say, the Grunt, and it's like it doesn't have the same sort of weird mystery or feeling as the Gatherer, and it sort of has this same sort of otherworldly or even just sort of strange sort of thought of like, okay, so how does that apply? And it's got this like strange, like big meaty claw. It's got this, and it's got some weird bandages. It's got its nipple out, and it kind of just helps add to this like sort of weird, strange nature of this thing compared to saying the Grunt, which it makes it seem like, oh, it's just a dude that works for another dude. Here we want to make it stand on its own 2 feet, and that was the main intention of when I named it, when I wanted to name it this.
A creature twisted and
this is the original model with some tweaks or updates here and there. This is the original Dark Descent model. This might be a newer engine clip. I could be wrong. This weapon swipe animation, pretty neat. And then another thing was, in the script writing process, I wanted it to be the perspective of someone who sees this thing and realizes, oh, this is kind of like a guy. It's not a guy. It's a little ambiguous, but like there's something about it that's like so genuinely horrifying in itself that like you might even prefer the darkness to whatever this thing is or was or is going to be. I think there's that level of horror that was very interesting to explore when writing for Amnesia in this concept, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed delving into Amnesia lore as well. And of course, we want to drop Alexander here and there.
The Gatherer's power is unraveling sanity.
I think this power is... So, this power I do like a lot, and the main issue is making this not feel like it was a exact copy or sort of a replication of Doctor. But the thing with Doctor is that with the madness mechanic of, oh, madness goes up in Terroritus or when you're affected by the power, it's such a good, flavorful, and mechanically sound way of being like, you're going insane, you're going mad because of the presence of this one creature, this one thing, and it works so well. So the idea that I had when I was first drafting this power was, okay, what can I use here and make it not doctor? Like, people recognize, okay, that makes sense because you're going insane. But I wanted to make it stand out apart from any sort of madness effect, like any semblance of the madness effect. Like, you're not going to constantly hear Teridius. There was going to be some sort of illusion or hallucination, which ended up being figments, as they'll describe later. And those made it to the final thing. And the idea of amnesia in the Dark Descent. There's a very good, I think it's called War Stories. That's the series for amnesia development, where they talk about, oh, if the game's like, oh, you're going insane, you're gonna be more vulnerable to the monster and the attacks. And it's like, oh shit, like, that scares the player, because you're like, oh, well, I should drink the sanity potions, I should take care of myself and avoid conflict and all that. And they just straight up admitted, like, yeah, that was a lie. That was never a mechanic. It was just a lie to the player, made them think they would be more vulnerable than they were, and they contributed to their own scare. And I remember I saw that so long ago, and I kept going back to it when I was designing the power, and I was like, that's such a cool idea. And it speaks so much to the idea of what makes the game scary to people, because in a lot of horror games, you make your own horror. You make yourself scared because of paranoia, because of fears, because of phobias, even. Sorry, I'm like, I itch my face when I talk. And again, like, I talk with my hands. It was such an inspiring moment to be like, okay, so how do I use that? And the idea was that the figments will sort of wear you down, whittle you down as you get more and more insane, lose your sanity, and eventually they will become harmful, because in that point you have lost so much of your sanity that you are fully in belief that this thing, in every form, every shape that it could take, will harm you or hurt you.
Fears and succumb to overwhelming odds that could prove nothing more than a brief scare.
And then also, like, sort of a similar effect of, like, the blur when you encounter when you lose sanity in amnesia. And then when you get there's like an extra effect, Unravel, when it's empty entirely, which some add-ons reference, and that's when you're able to be hit with it. So another thing was to tie into the mechanic. One thing that I, especially now in my more modern designs of power designs and perk designs for characters, is what is the fantasy that this character is trying to do? Like, what is the ideal fantasy that playing this character, playing against them, can fulfill? I think when we did Pennywise, that is when that philosophy, that I started using that in full swing, where it's like, okay, so how do you present this character in a very true and honest way that does not diminish their other qualities? And while you can't do that every single time, I wanted to make sure that this felt like you are in an amnesia game, or this is a concept in an amnesia game that would be in Dead by Daylight, essentially. Slender is like the most literal translation of that. It has its own issues. I know there's a lot of people who don't like it. There's a lot of people who do like it. I'm still kind of on the fence with it. I do think there's a lot of things we could have done better, but I think this is probably the best version of that, where you can hide in lockers and you regain your maximum sanity lost, as well as sanity lost normally. And lockers are a huge point because you can hide in cabinets. We also made the effort to make the cabinets from Amnesia into the lockers for the map, so they're not just like bright red. Although I think if you were to literally port this into Dead by Daylight, they would have to be red for the to identify them as a player rather than a piece of the environment. But you are immune to sanity decay in lockers, similar to how Doctor's Madness works. That was more of a convenient similarity, but it helps bridge people to go from, oh, so this killer who has a mechanic similar to a character who already is in the game that a lot of people are aware of, you can bridge that gap, and you can bridge the gap and help them understand it more clearly. you don't need to directly copy a power or a design to make people understand, oh, so that's the idea behind this, right? Same thing happened when Wesker came out. People were like, oh, so it's like a demo lunge, or it's like, you know, this or that. And it made people go, okay, so I can sort of reasonably assume that mechanical prowess or understanding that I have for this one character can transfer over to this, although it will need to be tweaked. I think that's a great way to onboard people, because if it's too different, you can alienate some people in how it works, or make them, they won't fully understand the actual practicality of such an ability. I'm rambling about this. It's a lot of detail going into making sure that this is an enjoyable experience and possible to understand. Wretched Anatomy is a part of their power. You can hold it down similar like demo. You can hold it to shred, or just hold it to detect. Originally, summon Figments was like 1 or 2. It wasn't. It was. I think it was just 1, and then eventually numbers got shifted and it was 2 to add more pressure. Because if you just got chased by 1, it would be kind of easy to avoid in an AI that couldn't vault or whatever. And then here's an example where you could summon a Figment and then they would run into it. If they already had maximum sanity decayed, then they would just get injured. So it put a pressure on them to recover and be safe.
Summoning Figments has a long cooldown before it is usable again. All Figments in the
long cooldown. I believe this is Stumble. Yeah. So Stumble is a very interesting thing because it's such a dumb idea on the literal paper surface, where it's like, why would you ever want to put a Stumble, like a mini lunge, like a killer dead hard essentially, and it just can't do anything, right? Like, that's not going to do any damage. The idea was that you could effectively bait it with things like, you know, how Wraith has a bone crackle when you bring up the bell. You could bait out dead hards, you could try to bait out different movements, different perks, techniques, etc., or dropping pallets. So you could use that opportunity to either do it for distance or for baiting it out with the similar motions, or you could just go straight into it by holding the attack button and do Thrash, which is sort of this almost Bubba-like sort of run forward, you slash, you just do one thing of damage and that's it. It's not enough insta down. And then you thrash afterwards. So it's very much like a Bubba run in a sense of like you can do damage to one or multiple depending if you collide. And thrash has the practicality of breaking lockers. Another thing was, this should feel not like a direct translation of Amnesia: The Dark Descent into Dead by Daylight, but it should be an elevation of that. So the idea was, well, if they're in a locker, like, what are you gonna do? It's literally the most safest place ever, and despite, you know, crows and AFK and all that stuff, people that can happen to them, it's like the safest place to be. So the idea was, okay, so the killer can rend it because the thrash is that powerful. It rends lockers at people who are trying to do it, so you could catch up to them or try to discover them through that. And it was just sort of tacked on as like a, oh, that's a cool little thing for them to interact with the world and to stop lockers. Like the idea is also checking lockers, you know, that kind of stuff. Because there's such a crucial part, like even one of Daniel's perks later has to do with like exiting lockers and stuff. So one thing that I do like doing in these ideas is if there's a killer and a survivor, I want them to sort of mirror each other in mechanics, where one might have an answer to another one's ability, or vice versa, or even just back and forth constantly. Like FNAF had one with Witness the Truth for Michael, and what was it? I can't remember what the perk was called for Springtrap, but it was the one where you, if anyone sees your aura, it would cause them to become oblivious for a time. And that, I think, is the worst iteration of that idea that I like. But I know some people understood, like, oh, it's cool that they interact with each other in their perks. It's a cool storytelling device for characters who are related or connected somehow, I think, at least.
Gatherer
perks, there are some cool ideas that I had here that got there's not a lot of changes that these went through as I was writing them or developed them. Horrific Overture was always, I thought the idea of another screaming perk would be awesome. Infectious Fright is very cool. I know a lot of people thought this was basically just the same exact thing as Infectious Fright when it came out, so I was like, okay, fair enough. It's a little hard to explain in a script where I'm not just actively having Pixel Bush read off the text effect, which is a major thing. If you just read off the text effect, it's the most boring script ever. It's such a by the numbers thing that, like, why would you listen to this? It's not fun. Horrific Overture, some people did catch this, which was nice. Yeah, so this was the idea. This was used in conjunction with Infectious Fright. So you would have someone who screams, like when they get down, a survivor that's within 16 meters, I think, at the max range, screams, and then it cascades off of them to every other person nearby. So you can have things like Deathbound, where it screams both people, and then even people who are nearby them. And it has a cooldown. So the idea is that you could sort of just pinball information of scream locations on them. This is just a direct Machine for Pigs reference. The idea of an engine that constantly fuels itself and is just a great source of torment. Also, in one of Daniel's perks, it also has this effect. But this is one of like the first visuals I had in mind for the orb, or the orb being used. So that's what this is supposed to be intending for visually. So yeah, the idea, the allusions to the machine, Mandus, Oswald Mandus, the engineer, etc. from Machine Pigs. I know it's not a game a lot of people like. I am a huge fan of a lot of the narrative of the game, as well as the ending sequence. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's one of my favorite game dialogues ever, and pieces of game music in horror. Also, this was meant to be like a perk that's like, why would you run it by itself? It's not that good. It's meant to be a synergy perk where it's like, oh, that second part of the perk where you can make a nearby hook into a scourge hook for a time, it literally feeds into itself. So you're giving up a perk slot to get scourge hooks more reliably, even if you're not near one. So it's a bit weird, it's a bit strange, but it is worth it for what it is capable of if you want to utilize perks like Monstrous Shrine or things like Pain Resonance, although now that's a token based, so who knows. It was not token based when I wrote it, but I still think there's a lot of room for possible synergy with this, especially like Gift of Pain. Anything that I think enables synergy and makes people think, oh, I could use that with this and that. I think those are like some of the best perks, because it gets people to go outside of their comfort zone or think of cool combos that lets them try new play styles. And I don't think we see it enough in designs. I think there's maybe some too many safe designs, or designs that just don't work with anything else that it's intended to, or doesn't work with perks but items. And I think those are some of the worst offenders. It is one of my favorite design methods or concepts, and I'm really glad that this version of it kind of went unchanged throughout development. This one, icon-wise, is one of my favorites because it is an almost direct reference to one of my favorite video games, Disco Elysium. Outburst is a direct reference to Half-Light, which is a skill from Disco Elysium, where it's like this like super cool like blur of violence of a man. It's like a smear of violence, I think is what I used to describe it. And it's like about this like physicality, this violence in a body, and just that was the visual, the idea of like a head like violently coming down forward, and it's just streaks of like blood or the color, or anything, any part of this body. So you can kind of see like there's a bit of a face here, there's mouth, open teeth, etc. And that was the idea behind it. It was just meant to be outburst rage. Early on I called it Half-Light, but it felt like this is a Disco Elysium reference, has nothing to do with Amnesia. I just took visual inspiration from Disco Elysium because it was such a striking design and visual to implement. But yeah, it's pretty much that. It was originally called Half-Light, didn't really apply. Called it, I think, something else. I think this was called Wretched Anatomy before the part of the power was called Wretched Anatomy. And so Outburst eventually became the name, and that's where it is now. This was an idea of like, oh, if you get stunned, you get a bonus for like 20 seconds, 24 seconds. Action speed increase, field of view increase, only because at the time, again, behavior didn't give us a FOV slider, and I think we really should. But the idea of giving you increased range and kind of just more capability after getting stunned was very interesting, so I added it onto it. Now, my favorite part of the video, Daniel. I love, there's so much love and work that went into this. So I do want to say that Daniel was a lot of time in work in progress. Cam, also known as Efernal, was the person who modeled Daniel based on like concept art and a couple pieces of hand-picked fan art that really embody this character. Daniel is from a 13-year-old game. Like, there's no real reference of him. There's a bunch of fan art, but like it's never super consistent. There is one piece of official art that he has, and his only character model that is in the original game is literally the hand holding the lantern. So this was all from all hand done. The model was incredible. Cam was super cool with us. We've been talking for a while about working on stuff together. There's like one thing that I can't talk about that I'm really hoping we get to share, that I'm super passionate and excited about. That's literally as much as I can say. I'm sorry. Daniel came together so amazingly. Unfortunately, Cam was not able to totally be able to provide more time into this project. But we, with someone who had worked with us on the Pennywise thumbnail render, we had recruited, we asked around to others who could help with finish by texturing Daniel, and they directly referenced and suggested Roman Noodles. And so Roman has been an absolute champion working with us on this and been super patient with us and all of our like really frankly absurd amount of requests. And so he made these beautiful HD renders, which you've probably seen in thumbnails, and some promotional posts and so on, and made a key art, which was something I was super stoked about, because it's like, oh, every Dead by Daylight chapter has a key art where it's like new survivor. I keep forgetting the camera's not over here, it's over here. It's like new survivor, map, new killer, and it's like all structured. It's got cool like visual and stuff, and I was like, I want exactly that. I want something that's super cool like that. We talked about maybe we could get an artist to do that, and then it's like, oh, that's expensive. And it was also very time consuming for them. We originally were going to scrap it, and then I think Roman got in contact with us and said, hey, do you need HD renders of like your characters for thumbnails? And I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And we worked together. It was so incredible. Again, like so patient with us, so dedicated. And so, you know, we have Daniel. Daniel was like, took so long. Oh yeah, this is another. I'm gonna move this out of the way. Daniel, this shot of Daniel is in the newer engine. This is in the newer version of the engine. You can see there's a bit better visual on the hair than like in the very next shot. So I would advise to be aware of that. But yeah, super cool. Sorry, it's 12:30 right now. It's very not late, technically late, but more technically early. Early. Had a very long day. I just kind of want to get this out of the way. Daniel, super awesome to have this model available to us. I will say that when it came to choosing a survivor, if we were going to do one, if Daniel wasn't going to work out, we were going to fully consider doing Tassi. I believe it's Tassi. Yeah, Tassi, I think so. From Amnesia Rebirth, because it was the only other character who had like an actual character model. I think at the time she was just missing her head, which we found later in the files, which was very strange in a bunch of weird places. And the game didn't have a whole lot of documentation at the time anyway. Which we included as a skin in the menu, which I'll go over briefly at the end. But I was so glad that Daniel, we got to use him. He was such a cool character, and I'm sure it brought a lot of people back. A lot of people probably don't even know he never had a character model. This is all custom, and it's just cool to be a part of this. It's cool to be doing this and say, hey, look how cool this is. I think this is intended to be a love letter to Amnesia fans and Dead by Daylight fans who are like, oh, I don't know about Amnesia. I've never heard of Amnesia. It's an old game. It's an old series. Even the bunker, like, it's brand new and it's awesome. But, like, you know, some people aren't aware of what Amnesia is. So, you know, being able to bring it up and sort of say, hey, look at this thing that means a lot to people, and we want to show you the best parts about it. We want to show you what made people fall in love with it. We want to make it so that it doesn't just reference, it's not just catering to them, it's not just fan service. We want to convince you that this is something worth your time. This is something that is awesome. This is something that people care about. And I hope that's what every concept does. With FNAF, a lot of people were saying, hey, I don't care about FNAF. But the concept was very cool. I think there is place for this idea in Dead by Daylight. And that was like one of the most, like, one of the only things that I really cared about. And I feel like if you can get people, not that hates the idea of having them there, but if you can get people who aren't really one way or the other about it, or even unknown to the idea, and sell them on it, you can get them encouraged on it. You can get them in on, you know, someone's favorite idea, someone's favorite game. And it's so cool to see that already, like within 12 hours of this thing coming out, people are saying, oh, I've never played Amnesia. And other people are like, this is like one of my favorite games. I got scared. You should pick up, you know, this. If you can't pick up the old games, get the new game. The new game is really good, which it is. You should play it. I really enjoyed Bunker. It was a great time. I was going to stream it to celebrate after the concept came out, but I got really impatient and the game was really good. So, yeah, there's all that. Anyway, Daniel, super cool. Also, I couldn't share these perks ahead of time because they had Daniel, and that was a big secret. Specifically remember telling Roman, Cam, and I think like a couple other people, hey, don't snitch, don't tell anyone about Daniel until the thing comes out. And no one really talked about it. There's a couple people that were like, oh, Daniel, but I don't think they knew that Daniel didn't have a model or anything. So it was just a very cool experience to be a part of, a cool secret, because people weren't really expecting it. Even in the original thumbnail, we didn't have Daniel. Now it does. Oh yeah, another thing. This perk icon, this is another the orb sort of thing. Him pondering his goddamn orb. It's very cool. Also, very weird hand pose. It looks wrong every single time I look at it. The idea of Daniel's perks. I'm not sure. I really hope this audio is not like super. Okay, so a lot of Daniel's perks all about observing things, like the horror protagonist, like of these like early horror games, where it's like you can look at these. You can be like, okay, I'm gonna observe. I'm gonna check out this puzzle. I'm gonna like try to figure out my way out of this situation, and also hiding and like proficiency in being hidden and the killer being unaware of your presence or even attempts at hiding. And I felt like that is what needed to be Daniel. Daniel couldn't be confrontational. He could have had like some hostile or aggressive perk. He needed something that would have let him seep into the background and not only be afraid of the darkness, but hide it in the darkness. So that's why we have adaptive observations for aura reading stuff, and then learning after you observe enough. Hiding in lockers, exiting lockers, crouching, etc. Hideaway. the other thing. There's a couple names. I think names got swapped around a few times between some of these perks. The idea of faster slow vault, instead of just saying vault speeds are this much faster, slow actions are faster. That I thought was like the more important detail. Love the tilt of the camera here. Super fun to work on this. It was awesome reviewing footage for this. This is a cool transition to the other portrait. I believe we're going to see the key art here soon. There's a full version of it available on my concept website at the bottom of the Amnesia page. There's also a thread. So Roman Noodles, who did the texture work and the renders for us for this, the image renders for our concept, and then Cam, who is Eternal, both on Twitter, if the site is even fucking working anymore, put threads up of saying, oh, here's a process of doing this, and here's some of the challenges that we overcame in the timeline. Super good reads, both incredibly talented people. Like, don't know what I did to deserve to work with such amazing people. It's so baffling to me. But they put up threads, and you can check them out if you're curious about like their process or ask them questions. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer or sort of give an idea of what it felt like. I'm gonna move my camera out of the way real quick. So this is what the okay, I'm still here. This is what the key art is. It's a little bit like stretched out. We gave it some motion so it wasn't just a still image. This is I have a sketch that I believe is in Roman's thread, which I was like, this is what I want the key art to look like. It's got this tilt, it's got, you know, this character here and this character here. They're around a corner, they have a lantern up, there's a portrait of Alexander behind him, and it worked out phenomenally. Alright, put myself back up here. He also added this like cool painterly style to it, which made it feel a lot more like Amnesia than it was like a 3D render, right? Then we have the map. This is the funniest campfire ever, but this is such an iconic shot. All this music again is done by First and Counter Assault. We have the typical menu setup here. All these descriptions and stuff, I wrote them. I write like pretty much any text you see on screen or that is read aloud in these videos, I write them, and I take an immense pride and joy that people do read these and pay attention. Like when people realized, oh, they're writing custom lore for these things. Like I think we started doing that with Pennywise, like after Predator, when we realized, oh, we should probably have like a little lore segment, a little lore tidbit. And so I started writing them, and people started reading them. They're like, wow, this is nice. And I'm like, thank you. But I think that probably Daniel's is my favorite that I've written so far. I also write the add-ons, stuff like that. And if you're one of those people who actually stopped to read all this and like really like sort of get into the actual like the way we try to immerse you into this concept and be like, this is how cool it could be, this is how cool this property could be for Dead by Daylight and all these other fans and stuff like that, I am immensely appreciative of that. It is such a detail that goes often overlooked, even in just normal Dead by Daylight standards. Like that kind of appreciation, even for whether it's a fan project or someone else's own concept or the official game, that appreciation is so immense and noteworthy that I don't think, like, if you think that someone overlooks your thanks, like there's always someone who will look at that and say that is one of the reasons why I want to keep doing this, one of the reasons why I want to keep applying this. Again, like having Dead by Daylight, all the devs who are working on these like small little intricate details or things that get overlooked, or just like small things, like just like one of my favorite examples is the add-ons for Oni. It tells a whole different story to his actual like canonical lore. It tells the way that he lived his married life, the way he raised his son, all these things that aren't expanded upon in his lore. And it's so fascinating that it's like this whole other not even this whole other person, this whole other expansion that's just hidden in text that people are like, okay, well, I'll skim past this because I need to go get my scalp top knot for my Oni charge build, right? it's so easy to overlook these things, and the fact that there are people that are willing to stop and read these things goes to show how very interesting they can be. Again, all lore. I remember the day we were like, okay, so originally I was given so many characters to write lore because we didn't implement a scroll bar, but then I think we got a comment because we had the image of a scroll bar added to it. We got a comment that said, hey, could you scroll down the lore so we could read the rest? And Rare Things and I were both like, fuck. Well, Rare Things was like, okay, I have to implement a scroll bar, and I'm like, fuck, I have to like consider writing longer lore. It was a very funny time. I'm sure I told that story before, but here's the proper values. Here's the whole ass power. If you want to read that, you don't really have to, but this is like the structure. The idea is that I want it to look as official as possible. It's a long power. There's a lot of details that go in. The issue with this is that compared to Dead by Daylight, you can't play it. That's just the fact. You can't play it to understand, oh, so I don't need this number, I don't need this number to describe it in the power, because I can play it and get a feel for it, have an idea of how long it lasts. Here, being overly specific helps a ton because you can get a better idea. If you have to read a power or a perk and you still walk away going, I don't know how that works, or I don't know why this says this, I don't know how that works. Unless you're trying something completely new mechanically, it's if you can reduce that to the littlest amount possible of like people being, oh, I don't know what that is. If people could just read it and their only questions are, how good is that? Instead of how does that work, or without, and their answer isn't in the actual text of that box, then you're good. You have something that people can read, can understand, and their questions aren't relating to what information you are missing. So like with perks, like, you know, if I have we'll go to a perk that isn't as wordy. If I go to a horrific overture, it says whenever a survivor screams, all other survivors within 12, 14, 16 meters of that survivor also scream, revealing their locations to you for 4 seconds. Horrific overture has a cooldown of 20 seconds. Cool. Okay, what questions would be the most reasonable to have after that? What qualifies as a scream? Trigger it. When a survivor is hit, they scream. When a survivor is hooked, they scream. When a survivor is shocked by doctor, they scream. Whenever a survivor is in the terror radius for infectious fright, they scream. Stuff like that. You can kind of reasonably assume and jump to, okay, so they scream, etc. How long are they revealed for? 4 seconds. Okay, cool. Does it have a cooldown? How often can it be triggered? 20 seconds. Okay. There's no other real questions to have. Same thing with Scourge Hook. Every Scourge Hook has there are 4 Scourge Hooks in the trial. They are randomly placed. Explains exactly what a Scourge Hook is, how many are in the trial, how many spawn, etc. You want to make sure that you are not just full of useless information, but you are full of the most uselessly useful information possible when you want to convey your idea. That is my takeaway for Dead by Daylight concepts, like in general, honestly. This icon was kind of last second. We realized, oh, we could probably have an offering for the map, right? Yeah, I did a sealed letter. This is meant to be the letter that Alexander sent to Daniel at this, prior to the events of the start of the first game for Amnesia. So if you're a fan of that lore, that's what that is. I keep having to look at Brennenberg because I feel like I spell it wrong every single time. But yeah, there's that. I'm trying to think what else there was. Ugh. Wow, sorry if I'm making you yawn. Oh, it's paused. Of course, did all the add-ons. I was very busy when I was doing these add-ons, so there are a lot that are reusing certain assets or certain visuals. Like all the commons are the same exact fucking jar, just edited a little bit, different labels, but it worked out because the idea was these were like the regent chemicals that you collected early on in the game to make a pot of acid, which pot of acid is an add-on in purple, which is a combined of all the positive effects toned down a little bit. So that was sort of like a weird little storytelling within. I will say there is no bunker reference in the concept, because when we started the concept and we were in the early stages, they announced bunker, and then when they finished, when bunker came out and we all got to play it, the concept was like maybe 80% finished. There was no way we were going to be able to sneak stuff in. So you know, like in Rebirth got like some mention in the game, in this concept, and we were making sure. My main goal was I wanted every game or everything from Amnesia represented in this concept in some form. Obviously Dark Descent is the main one, but even Rebirth, and there is Justine, I believe, has like maybe one mention. I think that's the one that has the least amount of mentions. Also, there's the skin. We talked about having this as a skin. That'd be cool. Oh yeah, we have Daniel. I will want to play this real quick. Raising it, have a little equip sound effect. Love that. Very early on, it was also, oh, if Daniel could pull out like a lantern as his prop, like how new servers have that, then we should totally do that. Daniel is just a very interesting character. Super cool to write his lore. I loved writing it. I don't think really I need to stop and like kind of show you all the descriptions. I'm just trying to think of like stuff that relates to these. Tassie is, yeah, I just noticed something that's weird. That's fine. Tassie is a very a character that a lot of people probably don't even remember, but like she was the main character of Rebirth. She's neat. I think Rebirth is worth a revisit if you overlooked it, or maybe you just didn't finish it. A lot of people seem to have just forgotten that the game existed. You know, I'm not saying that it's like a hidden gem or it's like one of the best games in the series. I'm just saying it's worth revisiting if you have a chance. Never know. It is a good habit to revisit games that you thought were not good, like years ago, and just reevaluate it with your current tastes and interests. I have found a lot of games that I thought were not good that I own still, and I revisit them and I'm like, oh, this is actually not that bad. Or, oh, maybe I just didn't understand the way this worked. I was frustrated with this gameplay element, stuff like that. I believe that's it. Oh yeah, Tassie got a small like description, sort of like it's similar to like her legendary cosmetic description, and then like a Daniel's personal perks to differentiate her from Daniel. They're not different characters. They're the same character. They just have a legendary skin. And then we get the credits. Wow, an hour. I think this is actually not. So, I'm gonna be scared if I find out this is like the longest commentary that I've recorded, or the shortest, because this is the longest video we've done for Dead by Daylight concepts, and it is very interesting. Oh, well, I cannot stop yawning. I'm gonna go to bed after this. So for Dead by Daylight concepts, I really enjoy doing this one. I have already said this before, but like working with all the people on this has been one of the most genuinely enriching experiences ever. I've learned a lot of management, a lot of management skills, a lot of super cool insights into sort of what a team needs, and sort of like trying to figure out compromises, or even figuring out solutions to things that some people might not realize are issues in the first place. And I am so excited. Just I've already seen some stuff of the stuff that we want to work on, and it's like, oh, it's so cool, but I can't say it. There's no teaser in this one. we want to make sure that we can that we are capable of doing the teaser that we want to do, the next concept we want to do. Right now, we're not entirely sure if we're able to in a timely or even technical manner. But we are holding on to hope that we're going to be able to, because if not, then that sucks, and it's something that we're all really passionate and excited about. The design documents pretty much already done for this, and like a couple other stuff in mind. We might have a couple stuff on a couple smaller things on the way. Who knows? Time will tell. We'll keep you notified. Thank you for watching or listening to me ramble for an hour, almost an hour, 5 minutes shy. I wish I had something to promote. I just sold some merch of some perk stuff, not in the concept stuff. That will come at a later date. Right now I'm doing perk pack stuff that I've done based on other characters. Those pre-orders just ended. Bad timing to release the concept video and just say, oh, you missed the merch. They'll be back in stock at some point. There will be concept charms, keychains, at some point. I just can't do them right now. Otherwise, currently, assuming the site is still active and being not dying as it has been in the past 24 hours that I've experienced, I will be available on Twitter. I have a Discord server. All my information is available on my website. I have a Patreon, which is generally just the Perk Pack series Patreon, but it's also kind of support for me as a person. If you enjoy the stuff that I do, any amount of support, just sharing videos, just sharing stuff, be creative, share your own concepts with other people. The more people that get their eyes on what you work on, the more genuine feedback that people can have towards it. If you just keep showing it to friends, then you're likely to not get feedback that is a little more critical, I would say. And I think that helps a lot. So if you just seek out like one person, like, just coming after me and being, hey, I want your opinion on my concept. One of the first things I almost always say is like, put it in front of as many people as you can. Let them see what you're working on. And I'm sure they'll notice 1,000 things that I didn't notice and 100 things that you definitely didn't notice, and realize, oh, that would definitely improve this. Not even as a balance thing or I prefer if this killer sucked or this survivor perk was broken. Just people can point out when something is off, something is wrong, uncanny, or whether it's not to the same degree of quality, that sort of thing. Just make sure that you do not sort of inflate it has to be broken to be a good design, or it has to be broken to be a powerful design. Make something interesting, make something experimental. I love putting perks that make no sense in these, or that are very vague, because it gets people talking about them, it gets people thinking about them. If you make something that gets people to think, then you have something worth talking about. Not worth talking about. You have something that is a point in a discussion, a notable point in discussion. That is my advice. I would love to do more videos on like how to do concepts. I do not have a lot of time to do that. I would love a lot more time, but I don't. It's on the agenda. I've promised that I would do icon videos of how to do icons. I just do not have that time. Yeah. Amnesia's out. Took us long enough. Alright. I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this didn't go on for too long and some of you were able to keep up. Hopefully that was clear. If not, I'll re-record this and be very upset. Alright. All of you have a good one. Stay safe. And I hope I will get to do a concept I really like that I'm thinking about, but I cannot tell you unless we share the same mind link powers and I am transferring this information to you via brainwaves. Bye.